Alright, welcome. We're making a quick video here that has to do with a little lesson in history that has largely been ignored by any mainstream historical sources. I never heard about it in any of my schooling. I just barely learned about it less than 2 weeks ago. It was so fascinating I immediately researched all of the details about it that were recorded. It happened in 1925 and 1932, and it's known as the Bonus Expeditionary Force, kind of not really a massacre, but a resistance movement by U.S. Army veterans from World War I against current U.S. Army soldiers that squared off in Washington, D.C. So, without giving too many further details away, I got Gary here, and he isn't really familiar with it. And so when I started telling him about it, we decided, let's make a quick video about it. Okay, so primarily who I'm aiming this at, we're going to be laying down some foundational videos soon about men going their own way and not the government's way. And part of exposing, hopefully, the depth of the American government's corruption and multifaceted attempts to really disempower specifically men. I'm just going to be giving examples, real-world examples that you probably don't know about to further illustrate my point, my assertion that you're not part of the Rebel Alliance, you're part of the evil empire and may not know it, which can be a difficult thing to swallow. If you claim to be part of the MGTOW community, you're no stranger to swallowing difficult red pills to take, and it's not pleasant to hear, oh my gosh, could there be another one out there I don't know about? And great, does that mean I'm headed for a whole new grief cycle, in effect, of denial, acceptance, negotiation, depression, all of that fun, which isn't. Because this is very controversial, and the fact that it's been hidden in your education, and all public education, is evidence of that, and it can make people unhappy. But here's how it goes, and everything I'm about to tell you can be obviously independently verified. There is actually video footage of these events, so it's not just something written down in history and you don't know if it actually went down like that. Now, many of the details that were recorded may or may not be 100% accurate. We know that history often likely isn't 100% accurate as it's recorded, but yeah, the video footage does exist. So, to just jump right in, as shocking as it may sound, the veterans from World War I, yes, did square off and do battle with current military members from the U.S. Army. So U.S. Army versus U.S. Army, whoa, what? So what happened was, you've got Woodrow Wilson, right? He's pres from 1913 to 1921, Woodrow Wilson, yeah. And this winter, sorry, but we think all United States presidents are just horribly evil and corrupt, and they just have climbed this hierarchy of evil that knows no ends. Woodrow Wilson was president during such amazing events as Prohibition, as the 19th Amendment, and giving women the option to vote. And, the establishment and implementation of the Federal Reserve. All right, so all that banking nonsense. So, real winner of a president there. So, when the soldiers got back from World War I, and we all know this is, we all can imagine what kind of hell trench warfare in World War I was. It's probably some of the worst of any modern times, right? So these soldiers get back, and you got to keep in mind, soldiers were paid back then $1 to $1.25 a day. So even 100 years ago, that ain't much, okay? They actually opened up a draft and called it selective service. It wasn't actually selective, but you could either go be a soldier or, if you were more capable in other ways, more useful in other ways, maybe you would be at home working in a factory, in an industry that they needed qualified workers for. And in doing so, you'd be making 10 times what a soldier on the front lines would be making. And keep in mind, these soldiers in World War I in Europe, they left their jobs. They left their jobs where they would be making much more money than they were making as a soldier. All right. So they all come back, And of course, there's all, we all know what happens to men when they get sent off to war and come back, especially one as, probably Iraq. I don't want to compare apples and oranges here, but World War I, again, on par with the most horrific experiences you can imagine, I'm sure. The gas, we've all seen movies and heard accounts through documentaries. So they come back and they're trying to make the best of it. And they and the public, and to a limited extent the politicians, agree that something is owed to these soldiers in compensation for the wages that they would have made but didn't, because they sacrificed, many of them, their lives for the country. In the first 18 months, 100,000 died, 200,000 wounded and gassed. That's a lot of people back then. Again, those numbers on paper don't do it justice, but let's move on as best we can. So they come back and they're trying to work out how much we should get paid and how is this going to work out. And obviously this is all before GI Bill. And truth be known, the incident I'm about to explain to you was the root cause of the creation of the GI Bill later in 1944. All right. So, during the Roaring 20s, the economy was good. People could feed their families. People felt like they had a future. The meaning to life, working just like, kind of timeless in ways. And everything was fine. Right around 1924, and what got implemented in, I believe, 1925, was an agreement called, I forgot the name of it exactly. It's like a specific act. I'll look it up and put it in the notes. My bad. But Congress passed an act that said, okay, we're going to pay these people some money. Now, we're not going to do it right now. We're going to do it in 20 years. Again, doing something the government often does, which is, I have a burden now. Let me just push that off onto the next generation. When I'm out of power and don't have to deal with it.
Couple of elections
later. Oh, we can't, we're recovering from World War I. War is good for the economies. But anyway. So they agreed, and they're like, okay, well, I guess we got to take it. So 20 years, okay, I've got this retirement coming up. Now, the payments could be, and by the way, this payment would be, in theory, accruing interest. So they were thinking during all this time, we're actually going to get paid a lot more in 20 years than we would if we got paid right now.
Like they thought there was
they thought they would.
Like a CD deposited somewhere or some kind of investment.
Right. And to jump forward a little bit, like one guy gave a story about his dad coming home with $700 in his pocket and he was like, woohoo, I got paid. So the amount of money we're talking about here is, even if that was $7,000 back then, sorry, that's not even close to compensation for what these people are doing. Especially when you're talking about a conflict that's massive and the implications as high, the stakes as high as World War I. My God. All right. So that's the deal. They go, all right, we'll take it. And let's see, Woodrow Wilson, by the way, he had a stroke in the summer of 1919. And I believe he died in 1921. His successor, Harding, was, I believe he was actually given the oath of office by his father, the only president to have that happen, because his father was a notary, by lamplight because of the suddenness of Wilson's death. But Harding he's seen as one of the worst presidents the country's ever had, commonly. He was mired in affairs. He had mistresses. He was Bill Clinton all over the place back then, right?
He might actually end up my favorite.
Yeah, right? By the way, Wilson he had a stroke, and that was largely hidden. And he was ineffective. He tried to put the League of Nations, but it wasn't approved our membership. Anyway, there's lots of interesting details about these people's presidency when you kind of dig into it. So Harding comes up from 21 to 23. This is before the deal is made. He gets ousted. He's not effective. Calvin Coolidge comes in. He serves from 23 to 29. So he's the one who was president during the agreement in 24 to 25. Okay. Herbert Hoover takes over from 1929 to 1933. Now, the Great Depression obviously hit. The Great Depression was in the 30s. So now everything crashes. Now you got a bunch of men who have no savings. They're living hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, even if they're employed, which many of them weren't, assuming they're surviving the PTSD symptoms all this time. They've really got nowhere to go, and they decide, look, it's the Great Depression. We can't feed our kids. The Dust Bowl is going off. It's hell. We need this money now. We don't care about the accruing interest. We need to have it now as a matter of survival. And so I think 10,000 of them at first got together in Washington, D.C., and they're planning on marching on the Capitol. And keep in mind, you're talking about marching on the Capitol of the United States of America. Like, this is no joke. This is as serious as it gets. The call goes out.
Well, I mean, nowadays a march on the Capitol isn't as meaningful as it had been then.
Well, sure, but
at the time, I'm guessing it was a bigger deal.
It's so different because, I mean, the people at the very top learned through history that if you're going to build a big Capitol, first build tunnels underneath it. Because you know you're going to be fucking over the population. And when they come for you, you need to be able to escape underground. Like, there's no helicopters, there's no armored caravans and Secret Service or any of this stuff. There were tunnels under by the way, there's tunnels under the courthouse in Texas that are creepy as heck. Anyway. So, okay, so they start to, and then the call goes out, and now numbers swell, another like 25,000. World War I veterans are coming from all over the country, far away states, getting there any which way they can, hopping trains, hitchhiking, getting rides, just really living hand to mouth. So they finally get there, and this is all culminating in 1932. And they settled in Washington, D.C. around this area that was just, it was called like mud flats. It was like just super muddy. There's just mud everywhere. It was like ankle-deep mud. And when they got there, they constructed a town of wooden shacks, basically, for them all to kind of have some shelter. And then, so they've got this big town. And they're trying to apply as much public and political pressure as they possibly can. Like, to every member of the House of Representatives, they would always have like 2 of them in the office waiting to speak to them, making their presence known, just being kind of annoying to the normal D.C. life. And when they would come and go from the Capitol, they'd be either accosted or questioned. So it was just a constant harassment. They say harassment. You know, the bonus army would say, we're just trying to get what you've said we're owed.
And this is before, mass media or much of any media hardly at all. They're trying to make it into the newspapers. They're trying to make it in front of their quote unquote representatives, things like that.
The only people that have cameras have black and white cameras, and they're just media, and they're rare as heck, but you can see all this go down. So after only 2 weeks, House of Representatives caves, and they pass something that says, yeah, we're going to pay you now. So they're like elated. Woohoo, all right, yay. But they couldn't apply near the pressure on the Senate, and the Senate shot it down big time, something like 60-12 or something crazy. It got really smashed.
Now, this is at a time when the Senate, and I don't remember when everything changed, but I think the Senate was actually directly elected by legislatures of the states, not like through public. I forget when that changed. But so the Senate weren't voted on by these people like directly at all, if I remember right.
So they shot it down. So it never made it to the president's desk, and so they were going, okay, what are we going to do? Well, they tried to bribe members, and before I begin, the Bonus Expeditionary Force was called Bonus, apparently, by its detractors in order to spread this kind of propaganda idea that these are just greedy people who wanted a bonus. When you think of bonus, you think of on top of your normal pay, as if you'd already been paid, and you're just greedy and you want some more. It wasn't actually a bonus. It was just compensation that was agreed upon by all sides as, again, compensating them for the lost time from normal stateside jobs and wages. So they could go work for pennies over in the war and hopefully prevent the civilized world from descending into hell. So it's been recorded as Bonus Expeditionary Force, but just keep in mind, that's a propaganda word. That's not what the side fighting would say, apparently. So it gets shot down in the Senate. Some of the men, I guess they do get bribed away, but not most, not many. So some of the numbers fall away, but over 10,000, a good 5-figure number, stay. And they stay there with a passion. A lot of them don't have anywhere to go. Like, politicians are wondering, why don't they go home? They don't have a home to go to. A lot of these people are really that impoverished and that desperate. It's not a matter of choice. So they stay. So Hoover, and he's here dealing with this in conjunction with all your big World War II names that we're all taught are heroes. Eisenhower, MacArthur, Patton. Patton's with his tanks. Eisenhower's there. MacArthur's leading the army. First, they send in the police, right? Police, what they don't want to have happen is for these World War I veterans to get hurt or killed because of the power they carry through the public. These men just won World War I.
Okay.
These are veterans. We all know how high a status even today veterans have. So there was a really odd pressure upon the powers that be to like, oh, okay, we want these people to get the hell out of here because we don't care about them. The president doesn't care about military members. They don't care about them in the slightest. Not before, not then, and not today. They don't give a shit about any. I mean, just go to the current modern day VA hospital and see how much they care. Right? Everything since 9/11 especially. This is so self-evident. Doesn't even need to be said. All right, so the police go in, and what happens is the resistors kind of start to deal with the police and not put up with this, trying to get ransacked and bullied out of town, basically. So a few of them corner two cops. One of the cops ends up pulling out a gun and shooting one guy dead. The second cop pulls out a gun and shoots another guy, and he's laying there dying. This news makes it back to Hoover, and he's dismayed by this. We do not want, because what he's thinking is, I got to win re-election in 1933. This is all going down in 32. All he cares about, I would say, this is me talking, is re-election. What does the first-term president want more than anything else? A second term. Like that's just how it's always been. So the police went in and that didn't work. So now they send in the army. So this is where I just wish people would really grasp. There's so much about human nature in here, and especially when it comes to male action, male points of view, especially when paid to inflict violence. I just took so much away from this. The World War I veterans, they had a couple of leaders who would later admit, and commonly was reported in interviews, who typed out newspapers, they made a few horribly inaccurate assumptions. One, that the public would never stand for these World War I vets to be abused or ignored. And two, that the powers that be would never send the army against them to use physical violence. Both of those were not true. But they were working under the assumption that they were true. And, you know, how dangerous are assumptions that feel comforting, especially when you're feeling so desperate, but they're false. Like this, again, it always comes back to the truth. Like if you know the truth, you're able to make the most correct decisions. And if you don't know the truth and you're living on a delusion, you are going to get effed by the people that have more information than you. Like knowledge is power. All right. So with those incorrect assumptions, they're maintaining their ground. The army moves in. Now, there's a sequence of events here. I don't know exactly in what order they went, but here are a few of the sequences that happen. The army goes in. They're not shooting, right? But they've got their bayonets out. And they go through shack to shack, and they're basically forcefully evicting these people from their shelters and just casting them out into the wilderness. No pay, no housing, no food. Kids back home going hungry, wives wondering what the heck's going on. All to World War I vets.
Now, this is at a time when that meant a little bit more than now. I mean, we've lost sight of the fact that people starved.
Oh, yeah, starved to death.
Yeah.
If you want to know about the Great Depression, man, read The Grapes of Wrath, especially the last scene. I mean, the level of desperation, I don't think today I have no idea. But I don't know if any generation of Americans outside of war know what was actually going on.
But the idea of kicking people out of a home into the wilderness is a different meaning than
And Hoover knew it, and the public knew it. And again, he wanted re-election. So at one point in time, the army goes in, bayonets drawn, and trying to force these people out. And now there's history has recorded certain facts before the army went in, and it's kind of like, who knows what actually happened. MacArthur, being the gung-ho, murderous bulldog he is, considers these people to be a communistic insurrection and a threat to the United States government, even though there was zero evidence whatsoever or claims made at anyone that had anything to do with communism. He's on the record saying that. He also, Patton, throughout his whole career, had a problem with taking orders from presidents and higher ups. Like he just wasn't all that super obedient about it. So there's a bridge between the encampment and the army. History has recorded that Hoover said, "Do not cross that bridge." The order came to Patton with his tanks and soldiers, keep in mind, this is all intimidation factor, via paper. And he said, "I don't have time to deal with pieces of paper when I'm fighting a war." And he crosses anyway. Hoover later, it's recorded, admits that he's okay with that, but at the time he wasn't. So he directly disobeyed an order from his commander-in-chief. It's so funny, like, they're all the same. They don't... Anyway. So, and he crosses. Now, this is when the army comes in. Now, the most horrifying, one of the most disgusting details, it just twists my stomach to think about. And yet it is not surprising in the least to me, is that they actually started throwing gas grenades. They started to tear gas World War I Army vets who had just survived the gases of Europe. I mean, I just can't even imagine what a betrayal that act is. So it's burning everybody. This isn't just, my eyes are watering, let me run away. It's not just that. It's grenades. Boom. So they are able to disperse them through this force. And the vets are doing nothing but retreating. And they're grabbing their son or brother or whoever and bouncing. So they more or less escape. By the time it got night, whoops. I got to remember to do that to my phone too. By the time nighttime rolled around, the army started to set fire to the encampment so that they would never come back, and they burned the whole thing down. And one newspaper reported that it lit up the sky like any blazing inferno would, in some ways turning night into daylight, all in the shadow of the capital of the United States of America. And as night fell, Hoover retires and goes to bed. So there are a couple of clips on YouTube where you can find out kind of these details as it's recorded. And there's even like a half-hour documentary. I think it was put out by PBS or Frontline or one of those. And you can listen to all these events unfold. And I guess how I just want to conclude, or at least the story part of this, is there are many men in the MGTOW community who are attached to current or prior military service, especially if their dad was in, their grandpa was in, their uncles were in, their brothers were in. And to face the possibility that not only the United States government, the politicians at the top are now, and will always actively be working against the average man on the street to his known or unknown enslavement for power and profit. To face that possibility is potentially extremely painful and can cause fear, especially when facts start arising, measurable, objective, irrefutable facts start surfacing to the top that show your government isn't what it thought it was, the flag isn't what you think it is, the 4th of July isn't what you think it is, and that can cause some fear. I don't want reality to be that I've been misled at best or a fool at worst all this time. And that all the sacrifices that I know have been made in the name of this country and defending all these quote-unquote freedoms has all been in vain. That my buddies died in vain, that I killed people in vain, that I participated in something, or those loved ones and friends that I have participated in something that was unethical, unjustifiable murder and violence of indescribable, measure. No one wants to face that. That is the potential bitter red pill. It's much easier to say, man, I did 2 tours in Iraq. I'm a goddamn war hero. I'm a badass. There's a lot of pussy out there that loves a good, Oh, you would be such a good protector. You're so strong and tough, and my gosh, you must have coping skills to know. And oh, you have some PTSD. Oh, let me soothe that right out. I mean, I've been in the military. Anybody who's been in the military knows that effect from women and status and veterans. How many senior citizens do we see walking around with, some kind of "I was a veteran" hat on? I see it almost every day, especially in this part of the country. So and when they feel that fear come to the surface, like, oh my God, is what he's saying could be true? Have I been fooled all this time? That fear quickly turns to anger toward me, toward the messenger. I mean, they will bite that messenger hard. And I've experienced that before in MGTOW communities, and I usually can get past it after talking to them for a while, so they can see it's not like I want to say these words. I'm not up here getting off on causing such, here's another red pill for you to swallow. Enjoy that discomfort, that extreme discomfort. I don't get off on introducing people to this or telling them this or being like, oh, look at what I know and you don't, or I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you. That has nothing to do with it. I'd much rather just kick back, talk with a bunch of guys, like-minded men, share as many laughs as possible, and go about my day. That would be hella easier than causing a bunch of controversy about, please look at this evidence. If you want to be a man going your own way and not going the government's way, you need to explore that to every depth you can, every depth that exists, even as uncomfortable as it may be. Like, if the truth will set you free, that doesn't mean it doesn't come at an extraordinary cost. And that's a great thing about MGTOW Men is the red pill of getting over the fact that romantic love is never going to happen, the Disney cartoons were a lie, women can never love you like you love them, and they're always going to be out for themselves, is a bitter, bitter, bitter red pill because sex is amazing, amazing, amazing. So they all know what it's like to have one of those, but a lot of them have not taken the military government is the evil empire red pill. And I'm sorry please don't shoot the messenger. Like, I know it's a serious topic. I know I have never been in combat. I know I don't have any idea what that is like, and it's beyond me. I can't fathom that right now. That doesn't mean that what I'm saying is wrong. I mean, just because, someone in a mental asylum says 2 + 2 is 4 doesn't mean 2 + 2 is 4 is incorrect because he's in a mental asylum. I'm just taking it to an extreme and using a simple, oversimplified example. So there it is. That's what's known as the Bonus Expeditionary Force Massacre / Resistance. And I'd like to meet anyone who heard about that in public education. All the way through a bachelor's degree, I never even heard of that. The only reason I heard about this was I was watching some old Barbarossa video, and he mentioned it. This was from like 4, 5, 6 years ago. And Barbarossa, to anyone, no one has a higher regard in the MGTOW community than Barbarossa. They may be on the same shelf, but nobody is contributed more to the cause and community than he. And if you've listened to any of his content, he will agree with everything I'm saying. Everything I say about the state, everything I say about military service, everything I say about it's just another form of gynocentrism, enslavement, just like the Matrix movie, to turn you into a copper-top battery. He will agree with me saying all of that. He has said all of that in so many words. So if you're going to crap on what I'm saying, you might as well crap on what he's saying. Stardust, the Thinking AP's said very similar material. Because you can't restrict your box of acceptable logic I'm going to examine, or ethics. Now, there's many reasons why someone would still refute what I'm saying, and at the top of those reasons is probably pragmatism. It's not practical. What you're saying is they have all the power. It doesn't do any good to fight against people who have all the power. You're just wasting your time. You're spraying water on the beach when there's a tsunami on the way anyway. So I don't know what really more to add to this. It's a difficult topic, but I'm hoping that by making this video, people will kind of look at this situation and kind of examine it, and you can very much apply what happened back then to what is going on right now, to World War II, to Korea, to Vietnam, to Iraq 1, Iraq 2, 9/11, Afghanistan, all of it, Syria, Egypt. We've been involved. We're the world's police. America, those at the top, try to control everything. Look at the world map and look at every point where we have a military base or an installation. I mean, you're no hero for having served in the military. I got suckered in. I was blue pilled till I was 28, 29. and luckily got out before I could do any damage. But there it is. Just take a look at it. It's really all I got to say on it. I think I'm done. I think I'm out of steam there.
Outstanding. All right. Thanks. I appreciate you bringing me up to speed.
Cool.
Well,
You got anything? Are we done?
that'll do for the moment.
We're done. Let's cut it short and do another one.
All right. Take care.